October is obviously the spookiest time of the year, which means it's also the best time of the year to watch spooky movies. So today we are going through not 31, but 131 movies to watch during the Halloween season. Alright, and as you can see here, we'll go through the tier list real quick before we get going on these movies. Starting at the top, we have classics, then we have slashers, vampires, family-friendly, aliens, paranormal or supernatural, psychological, cult, horror comedies, and then zombies. So yes, obviously a lot of these could intertwine, and there's going to be a ton of slashers that are classics as well. So I'm just going to go based off my first instinct where I think these would land. And again, these aren't ranked in any particular order. It's just recommendations for the Halloween season. So let's get into it. All right, starting off, we have 10 Cloverfield Lane. This is an underrated sleeper film. I really, really like Dan Trachtenberg, who also did Prey. Prey, I don't think is on this list, but it's a fantastic film. So 10 Cloverfield Lane is obviously, it could be a monster film, but it's an alien film. So we'll put that in there. It really is a fun time. It's super, super suspenseful. The opening, 2/3 of the film essentially are, it's a psychological thriller, and then it leads into aliens. That's not too big of a spoiler. If you've watched Cloverfield, then you would probably go into 10 Cloverfield Lane expecting something alien-related, and it definitely goes there. So if you haven't seen this, I recommend it. Moving on, I don't want to spend too much time on each of these movies because we got 131 films, so let's kind of speed this up already. Next up, we got 28 Days Later, which is, of course, a zombie film. This is easily top 5 zombie films of all time for me. I do need to rewatch it. I'm excited for 28 Months Later, which I know is in the works. That I think the writing is done. I'm not for sure about that, but either way, check out 28 Days Later, one of the best zombie movies out there. Moving from zombies into vampires, though, we have one of my favorite vampire films of all time, and I do have a vampire ranking video coming out as well. It's a vampire tier list as well, so stay tuned for that so you can see which vampire films are my absolute favorite. I won't say where this lands, but it is definitely up there. 30 Days a Night is one of the first kind of horror films that I remember actually being truly scared by, and also vampires alone, I'm never really too scared of them. So yeah, I really, really like 30 Days a Night. So moving on from that, I actually think I'm going to put this next one. This is A Quiet Place. Easily you could put it into the alien category, but I'm actually going to put it into family friendly because I do feel like it's a gateway horror film. It's like, I think 10-year-old me, 9-year-old me would have really liked A Quiet Place. It's got some darker moments, but it's not too graphic, it's not too bloody, and I think some younger audiences could obviously handle it. So I'm going to put that in family friendly, even though, of course, it is a alien monster film. And moving on, we're going to stick with aliens. We have Alien. This is, again, they overlap. So it's an alien film, but I'm going to go ahead and put it in not slashers. I'm going to go ahead and put it in classics just because it truly is one of the best horror films of all time, one of the best sci-fi films of all time. I don't need to say anything else about it. Next up, we've got Anaconda, which I don't even know where to put this in. Honestly, I could kind of put it in, I should have had a monster category. So, oopsie on my part, but you know what? We're going to roll with it, and I'm going to put it in horror comedies just because it's kind of dumb. It's fun. You could put it in, like, Aliens, I guess. It's not an alien, but it's a creature. It's the closest thing to it on here. Now, I'm going to stick with horror comedies just because it's so goofy. The dialogue's goofy. Jon Voight is hilarious in that film. He's not supposed to be, but it's fantastic. I love Anaconda. Go check that film out. And I'm really excited for the upcoming reboot or remake, whichever it's going to be. Moving on, we've got, this is another alien film that really overlaps with the psychological aspect. And honestly, I might end up getting rid of the psychological tier. I don't know, because there's so many films on this, so we just got to keep going. But Annihilation, we're going to put this in aliens. It is a fantastic film. The first time that I saw it, I was like truly like blown away just from the visuals, but also the bear sequence. The crocodile design is awesome. The stuck to the pool wall. I don't want to say more about that, but it's a damn cool film. Go watch it. I actually I want to purchase Annihilation. I don't own it, but it is an amazing film, and I definitely recommend to anybody. Like anybody into horror, I'm going to say Annihilation. Go watch it. Actually, another recommendation that, like, this next film, Audition. If you don't know anything about this, don't look it up. Don't read the synopsis. Just go watch it. I basically did the same thing. I knew nothing about it other than the fact that it was called Audition and there was an audition and that there were some super intense sequences. I'm not going to say anything else, but like if you look at the poster, you'll get an idea of maybe possibly what you're going to be getting into. It is a crazy good film. I believe it's a Japanese film. I watched it for the first time a couple weeks ago, and it is truly fantastic. So here, you know what? I'm actually going to put this in psychological. So perfect. Glad that I kept that in there. And by the way, yeah, this is definitely not family friendly. Audition is one of those that, like, keep your kids away from. Moving on, we got Barbarian, which this film, it's not too graphic. It does have some over-the-top kind of gore in some moments that I think are, like, it's kind of funny, but this is also kind of like a creature film. You could put it in, I would say, psychological for the most part, just because you're stuck in that one location, kind of like 10 Cloverfield Lane, and you don't really have an idea of what's going on. And I'm not going to say what the thing is or what's going on in there. Yeah, it's totally a psychological horror, because if you've seen it, you've seen it. Then you know what I'm talking about. After that, we've got Beetlejuice, another family-friendly horror film, Halloween film. I actually didn't grow up watching Beetlejuice all that often. I had seen it, but I wasn't really too attached to it. It wasn't like something that I was super gravitated towards. I just never was like, hey, I want to watch Beetlejuice. And luckily, my girlfriend loves it, so I will say I've grown to like it, but it's not a film that I love or need to watch every Halloween. Moving on from that, this is going to be a controversial one because a lot of people, I mean, it's just a controversial film. Not that there's controversial subject matter, it's just that a lot of people don't like it because it's about a certain generation, but that is Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. We're going to put this in horror comedies. That is like purely horror comedy. I'll put that above, can I put that above Anaconda? Yeah. Put that above Anaconda just because it is straight up like, it's a satire at the end of the day, and it is. I saw it in theaters, laughed my ass off. The ending is fantastic, and I do own this film, so I'm glad about that. I definitely recommend for a fun time. Anybody who's under, I mean, I'm 25, and I really enjoyed it, so if that gives you any hint, you should watch it. It's fun. It's not trying to be anything super crazy. It's not saying anything. It's not trying to be too PC or political. It's making fun of all that. Again, it's a satire, so I do recommend it. Moving on, let's keep going. We've probably only gone through, what, like 10 films or something? Okay, Bones and All. This is a... I could put it in vampires just because it's about cannibalism, but I'm going to put it in psychological because it really is, like, it's a psychological romance cross-country travel. Like, it is a bizarre film. I saw this in the theater by myself, and it was terrifying, and I almost threw up a couple of times. So this is another one of those films. Don't watch it with any kids, anybody that's like, honestly, like, I watched a ton of graphic horror films when I was younger, but I don't think I would have been able to handle this if I were like 12 or 13. Moving on, we got Cabin Fever, the original, not the remake. And this is, I mean, it's kind of a zombie thing, but it's more of like, you know, a virus, but it's also a comedy. I'm going to go ahead. I don't know. I'm going to just put horror comedy. I should have thought out this list a little bit better, but you know what? It is what it is. It's got some funny moments, and I do enjoy the cast, and it's also very, very disgusting. Moving on, another horror comedy, we got Cabin in the Woods. This is probably one of the most iconic horror comedies that I actually didn't really, I didn't fully watch it all the way through until like last year or the year before. So it had been a long time since its release that I had watched it all the way through. I'd only ever seen clips of it, and it was fine. It was a fun watch. I don't think I'm going to watch it again, and I don't think I need to purchase it, but it was fun. Moving on, we got Candyman. We'll do both of these. We got Candyman 1 and 2. I'm going to go ahead and put Candyman up in the classics. I love the original Candyman. It is seriously one of the best horror films ever made and tackles some really difficult subject matter, and especially for the times, like, it does it really, really well. I love Candyman, and I need to purchase that as well. Moving on to Candyman 2021, I thought this one was actually a pretty good follow-up, a pretty good, I guess, continuation. Obviously not as good as the original, but I'm going to put this in, you could put it in slashers, but I do feel like it's, at the end of the day, it's more of a psychological horror. Even though it does have supernatural elements, I'm still going to put it in psychological. Moving on from that, we've got Carrie, which, again, this one could also be supernatural, you know, because it most definitely is, or, you know, paranormal-ish. But we're going to put it in classics because, again, that original is fantastic. It's iconic. The poster, the blood, it's iconic for a reason, and it's really good. I haven't seen it in a while, though. Moving on from that, we got Casper. I love this film. I haven't seen it in a long time. I actually haven't seen it in a couple years, but this is one of my favorite family-friendly Halloween films. I don't need to necessarily explain Casper. Moving on, we got Child's Play, the original, which I never grew up really liking, but I've grown to love the original over time, and this is going to be our first slasher. I could put it in classics, which I will say, yeah, it is an iconic horror icon and villain, but I don't think it quite compares to the ones that I'm personally putting in the classics portion. So I know I'm probably going to get a lot of hate from that from Chucky fans, but it is what it is. Moving on from there, we got the original Cloverfield, which I'm going to put above 10 Cloverfield Lane because I just personally like it more. Again, this isn't just like an actual ranking of them all. Well, I guess I could start doing that, but that's going to take forever. But yeah, 10 Cloverfield Lane is awesome. The original is miles better in my opinion, though, just because I have a special attachment with the original for it being the first horror film, period, that I saw in theaters. So that I will always love the original Cloverfield. Moving on, we got Clue, which is another horror comedy. I watched this year, maybe last year, but I believe I watched it this year for the first time, and this one really surprised me. I did not expect it to hold up as well as it did, and it's pretty dang funny. The cast really does a great job with what they were given, and especially being a board game film, you wouldn't expect it to be nearly as good as it is. After that, we've got Constantine, which I will say I watched for the first time this year, and I also wasn't huge on this, but it's still a recommendation for, you know, I feel like this could be a gateway horror film for people because it's demonic possession and monsters and demons and Keanu Reeves. It's fun. So we're going to put that in the paranormal and supernatural area. Yeah, again, I watched it for the first time. I thought the set design, practical design, all that stuff was really well done. I don't really care about that story. It just went on for a little bit too long. I would be excited for a new Constantine, either with or without Keanu Reeves, but yeah, Constantine, go check it out. Moving on from that, we got Crawl, another monster movie that I didn't make a monster movie for. Why did I not do this? Can I just change one of these into monsters? Should I do that? Okay, I'm doing it. I'm changing cult because I don't think there's very many cult movies. Like, one I'll mention was going to be Midsummer. But I'm going to change this to monster movies. And we're going to go ahead. And what else did I put in there? Okay, so I'm going to pull Anaconda from the horror comedies into monster movies. And we've got Crawl in there now as well. Is that it? Yes, that's it. You technically could put Barbarian kind of in there. I'm not going to. Moving on from that, we've got Dark Skies, which is a fantastic alien film. If you haven't seen Dark Skies, I believe it released in 2013. It's got Kerry Russell. This film I watched for like 2 or 3 years, like 3 or 4 times a year. It was that good to me, and it just creeps me out every time I watch it. If you get creeped out by aliens easily and you like that feeling and you like watching alien movies, check Dark Skies out because it's got some super spooky moments. I actually think the climax of the film is way better than a lot of people give it credit for. So a lot of these I feel like are truly kind of underrated. I mean, I know there's a bunch of big hits on here, but some of these, like Dark Skies, Annihilation, even Bones and All, which got a lot of, I guess, kind of praise. I feel like there's a lot of these that are very, very underappreciated. But moving on from that, we've got Dawn of the Dead. This is 2004. Zack Snyder. This is actually the I'll say this is my favorite Zack Snyder movie. I've never seen 300, and I don't care for the Batman vs. Superman or Justice League, those movies, so yeah. But Dawn of the Dead is fantastic. I think this is one of the best horror remakes of all time. Moving on from that, Deadstream. This is a Shudder original from last year. This is a horror comedy, no doubt. You could put it in supernatural, paranormal, or even monster, but it's more so supernatural and paranormal, but it's a horror comedy at the end of the day. I can't quite remember the dude's name, but he does a fantastic job acting as well as directing, and I believe he wrote the film with his wife. I'll put them on the screen, but they just seem like an awesome couple. They did a segment in VHS, and I really, really enjoyed Deadstream. Even if it wasn't my favorite movie of last year, it was just a super enjoyable time, and that's what you want when you're watching a movie. And it's not too often that you come out of a horror movie being I don't know. It's not too often that you come out of a horror movie at home and be as happy as I was. So I really appreciated Deadstream. Moving on from that, we got Deep Blue Sea. This is another monster creature movie. It's smart sharks. Smart sharks that eat people in dumb ways. And this movie used to scare the hell out of me because one of the characters' names was Carter. My name's Carter. And so, yeah, that dumb attachment, plus also I'm just scared of sharks in general. It's that dumb, irrational fear, but, they're not going to get me here, but I'm still scared. But Deep Blue Sea is fantastic. Samuel L. Jackson's iconic scene in the film. If you haven't seen it, just go watch it. I mean, you could even watch it just for that scene alone, but it really has an impact when you watch the film and then that scene happens. It's fantastic, and it's one of the best jump scares because that was the 90s, I believe. Yeah, so one of the best jump scares of the 90s, I would say, but they also weren't that prominent then. Moving on from that, we got Dr. Sleep, which is one of my favorite films. Did this come out in 2019? I can't remember, but I love this film. This could be psychological, supernatural. Yeah, I'm going to put it in supernatural because of the villains that have their powers. I could almost put this in classics, but I don't think I love Dr. Sleep as much as I love Alien or Candyman or Carrie even. So, but I own Dr. Sleep if that says anything, so I will keep it in the supernatural category. Moving on from that, we got another Donnie Darko. This will be supernatural as well. This is one of my favorite movies of all time, period. I actually don't want to say anything about really any of these movies, because if you haven't seen any of these movies, you should just give them a chance, because if you're watching this video, that means you're into horror to some extent. So just taking these recommendations, I think, would be a good bet. But Donnie Darko, it's so good. It's not necessarily too horror or horrific, but it's got some creepy moments. Moving on, we got Don't Breathe. This is another trapped in one location type of movie. I would still say it's a psychological horror film, even though there is a physical threat. Kids break into a house trying to get money from an old blind man. Stuff goes crazy. It's an entertaining film. The ending, I know, gets mixed opinions. Obviously, yeah, it's a lot and it's disgusting, but I think it was well handled for the most part. I'm already gagging thinking about it. Moving on from that, we got Dracula, another vampire film. This is the Bram Stoker's Dracula with Gary Oldman. I watched this for the first time this year as well. This is a dang good Dracula film. I enjoyed it through and through. The cast was phenomenal, and the visuals are insane. Moving on, we got Edward Scissorhands. This is easily my favorite Tim Burton film. And this is... Where can I put this? I'm going to put this in family friendly. I watched this as a kid, so yeah, I don't think there's anything scary about it. Moving on from that, we got Nightmare on Elm Street, the original. Obviously, it's going in classics. You could put it in slashers, but it's a classic slasher. And it's up there with Scream. It's up there with Halloween, so got to put that right up there. After that, we got Nightmare on Elm Street 3, which I don't think it's as good as the first one, but that's why we're going to put it here in the slasher category. It is still fantastic. There's 3 Nightmare on Elm Street films that I love, and I think all 3 of them are on this list. But if not, I will mention it later. Let me check. Maybe it's not on this list. But yes, it is on this list. We'll get to it later, and I just truly love this kind of trilogy of Nightmare on Elm Street films. If you know what I'm talking about, yeah, you probably know if you like Nightmare on Elm Street. Next up, we got Evil Dead 2. This is this a slasher? Or is this a classic? Or is it a horror comedy? Okay, I like Evil Dead, the original, more than Evil Dead 2, so I'm going to put this in horror comedy because it is a horror comedy. It's got way more comedy, slapstick, than it does horror. Moving on from that, we've got Evil Dead 2013, which I saw this in Seattle with my dad. It was fantastic. We had almost an empty theater, and both of us were like, that movie was awesome. It was just metal through and through. Like, that movie was gnarly. You could put it in slasher? No, because it's supernatural, right? Yeah. So I'm going to put it in supernatural. Supernatural. Because demonic, the Book of the Dead. And then we got the original, the Evil Dead, but I'm putting that in classics because it is my favorite of the Evil Dead franchise. Moving on, we got The Exorcist, which is, without a doubt, it is a classic by just standards. It is a classic horror film. I'm still not going to put it in the classics. I'm going to put it in paranormal or supernatural just because I don't love it. I loved the last 45 minutes of it, but I'm not an Exorcist guy, I guess. Moving on from that, we got The Faculty. I watched this for the first time either last year or beginning of this year. This film's fantastic. If like when I was talking about these alien films, I like alien films. I like aliens that scare me, and this was definitely not that. This could almost be put in horror comedy just because of the times. It's 90s. It's got Elijah Wood, Josh Hartnett. There's way more people in it than that, but it's a good film. It's a funny film. It's creepy. The creature design, although it doesn't totally hold up today, I still think it really, really works. And especially like I would show this to, 13-year-old me or whatever, and I don't think I would have a problem with the visual effects. So I'm going to put that up in Aliens. That is definitely an alien film. These next three films, I had to put all three of them on here because I can't really pick which one I like the most. I like this trilogy a lot. That's the Fear Street trilogy. We're going to put these all in slashers because they all are supernatural and paranormal, but I think, they've all got more of a slasher element, people coming after you type of style than they do the Ghosts. I know it is Ghosts, but I'm still going to put them in slashers. Don't kill me. Next up, we got Final Destination 3. This could easily be put in horror comedies. It's definitely not it's definitely not family friendly, and it more so is, supernatural because you don't know when death is coming for you. So yeah, I'm going to put it in supernatural, even though Final Destination 3 could be a horror comedy. After that, we got the original Final Destination, which I guess I'll just put in the same spot. I will say I do like Final Destination 3 more than the original. After that, we got Cronenberg's The Fly. This is easily a classic. It's disgusting. It's gnarly and disgusting. Freaky, this is another horror comedy. Vince Vaughn, this is Freaky Friday, but as a slasher. You could easily put this in the slasher category, but it's a horror comedy at the end of the day. It is more comedy when it comes to dealing with the horror aspects. Moving on from that, we got Friday the 13th. This is, of course, let's see here. It's a slasher, but it's going in classics. I know that's probably going to be controversial because so many people don't really care for the original. I love the original, and I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's up in the top 3. I might even be able to say as confident as top 2. I just don't know which one I like more, so it'll flip-flop. But I'm going to put that up there in the classics category. We got Get Out, which is psychological as well as almost supernatural. I mean, it's a bizarre film. Psychological horror all the way, though. That movie is fantastic. Jordan Peele just kills it every single time. Then we got Godzilla, the original. This is going into family friendly just because it's Godzilla. I don't think there's anybody that can't handle Godzilla. Moving on from that, we got Green Room. This is a dark movie. It takes place in Portland, Oregon. This is one of Anton Yelchin's last films, and it's one of my favorites of his, one of my favorite performances of his. That is going to go in psychological. Again, basically everything in the psychological category don't show your kids. I would say there's some things, in horror comedy you could show your kids. Some of these, actually, basically all these monster movies, they're just monster movies. I was watching them when I was a kid, so I say they're fine. But yeah, there's definitely more than just these 5 that could be in family friendly. Speaking of that, we got Gremlins. This is going in the family friendly category. It could go in the monster category. I was trying not to put any Christmas movies on here because Gremlins is a Christmas movie, but it's also a great Halloween watch. I actually think watching it towards the end of October, but not on Halloween, makes kind of like a good transition from Halloween into, I know we have Thanksgiving, but into Thanksgiving and into the Christmas season. Moving on from that, we got Halloween. We're going to do 3 of these films. Did I pick Halloween 2? I think, yep, this is Halloween 2. This is going in slashers. Of course, it's Michael back. He's returning and he's slashing. We're going to go ahead with the original is going to go up into the classics category. There's no argument there. John Carpenter's arguably his best film. I say arguably because there's one more that I think actually is better. Moving on from that, we got Halloween 2018, another slasher film. I don't think it's nearly as good as the original, but it was a fantastic follow-up. They should have just left it at that and not did the 2 other sequels. Moving on, we got Halloween Town. That goes into family friendly. Watched that earlier this year, and I will say it doesn't quite hold up, so this would probably be a recommendation for people with way, way, way young kids. After that, we got Hellbender. This could have been in that kind of cult category because it's witchy. It's about a family of witches, and this is gonna go into the supernatural. I was gonna say psychological, but it's more supernatural because they're more upfront about the supernatural elements within the film. Moving on, we got Hellraiser. This is another supernatural film. It is pure demonic demons, people sent from hell. After that, we got Hereditary. This is another cult film. So yeah, this was gonna be in that cult category, which is now the monster category. Because of that, though, I think it fits well in the psychological category because that movie is just mind-bending and is one wild ride. Yeah. After that, we got, I don't even know what this is. What is this? Oh, it's Hocus Pocus. Hocus Pocus easily goes in family friendly. Next up, we got Host by Rob Savage, I believe. This one was fantastic. It's actually updated as the updated list goes. Scientifically, this is the scariest movie of all time. I don't think that's true, but it's the film that has the highest heartbeat per minute. So that's kind of cool. That's really, it's a cool achievement for the film. So Host, this goes into paranormal, supernatural. After that, we've got Hush. This is a slasher film through and through. There's not as much slashing in it, but it is a killer coming to get you. Next up, we have Insidious. My camera got full, so I had to switch SD cards. Insidious is one of the first films that I saw in theaters, or one of the first horror films that I saw in theaters and really remembered it. Saw it with my dad and one of my sisters, and I remember that first title card just scaring the living shit out of all of us. So it's a fun film. It's definitely supernatural, so that goes right there. Moving on, we got The Invisible Man. This is psychological through and through. It could be kind of slasher-ish. Obviously, I kind of want to put it in classics just because I feel like years to come, people are really going to look back on that film and really, really appreciate it. But it's a good psychological horror film. Moving on from that, we got a film that I think is even better with It Follows. I think this was 2017. We got Micah Monroe. She's one of my favorite actresses. This is terrifying. This is supernatural all the way. Yeah, It Follows is a scary dang film. And we're getting so large here.
That's what she said. That's what she said. That's what she said.
That I can't fit everything on the screen. All right. Then we got It 2017. I did rewatch this just last week, and I will say I'm not as fond of it as I remember. I own the film because I bought it for $1 at the Dollar Tree, which is fantastic, right? But I will say, just because of how much I was let down by part 2, I just find myself not as engaged with part 1. So it is still, I think it is a really, really good film, though. And we're going to put it in Aliens, because you know what? Pennywise is an alien. He's from outer space. I don't care what anybody says. He's an alien. Moving on, we got It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. Obviously, this is family friendly. Nothing else to say about that other than I love Charlie Brown. Got the stripe on my arm right here. Moving on, we got Jaws. It's one of my favorite films of all time, probably my favorite film of all time, so that's going into classics. It's Jaws. It's a monster movie. Steven Spielberg, Roy Scheider, Richard Dreyfuss. My God, everything about this movie's perfect. Then we got Jennifer's Body, which I saw for the first time this year as well. This is a fun watch, and it's a fun vampire film. I didn't know it was a vampire film going into it. But yeah, it was a fun watch. I don't know if I'll rewatch it again, or, if I do, it won't be anytime soon. But yeah, I probably would have liked it a lot more if I would have watched it when it came out in 2009 and I was an 11-year-old boy. So we've got Let Me In. Actually, both of these, Let Me In and then Let the Right One In. Let Me In, I will say, it's the first one that I saw. I didn't know that it was a remake at the time, so I just have that attachment to the original. I honestly, if I knew, I would have watched the original first and then watched the remake, but that just isn't how it went down. So both of these are going into vampires, though. But yeah, I just do have more of an attachment to the remake just because I watched it first, and I feel like that's kind of the situation with most films. Next up, we got a weird recommendation that I still have not even finished just because it's so long and bizarre, and I want to be able to absorb it all, but there's so much that's happening all at once. That is Mad God. This is Phil Tippett, I believe. He's like a puppet master. This is, I'm going to put it in monster because it's stop motion, and there's a little bit of everything in here. So I'm going to leave that there in monster. I know it's a weird setting. Next up, we got Midsummer. This is a very gorgeous film and a very dark film. This was going to be in that cult category as well, but again, I don't think I can put it anywhere else now other than psychological horror. Oops. After that, we got Misery. This is a Stephen King classic that I watched last year for the first time, and it is fantastic. I'm going to put this one right up there in classics, actually. I might even go as far as to say that that's my favorite Stephen King horror adaptation. It's not my favorite Stephen King adaptation, but it's my favorite Stephen King horror adaptation. Next up, got a little self-plug. My Summer as a Goth. This is my first movie that I was in. I mean, it's my only movie that I've been in as of now. But My Summer as a Goth. It's a gothic love story that takes place in Portland, Oregon. It's fun. It's cute. It's simple. It's most definitely family friendly. There's some, drinking and making out here and there. But yeah, I'm in it. So if you want to see me in a movie, go check out My Summer as a Goth. It's on Amazon, I believe. And finishing off the Nightmare trilogy that I was talking about, we got Nightmare on Elm Street 1, 3, and then 8? If this is New Nightmare or Final Nightmare? A new Nightmare, I believe, I think. Either way, it's going into the slasher category. I'll just put it next to Nightmare on Elm Street 3. But that trilogy, all three have Heather Langenkamp. I think it's fantastic. It really is amazing. The last one, though, just took me by surprise. I had no idea that's where the story was headed. And if you still have no idea, haven't seen it, just watch the entire Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. And by the time that you're burnt out, this one will redeem everything, because there's some really poor entries, but then this film just comes out of nowhere and is like, hey, this is what you've wanted, and it's fantastic. Moving on, we got Night of the Living Dead. This is obviously a zombie classic film. Yeah, I gotta put it in classics. Come on. Yeah, there's no argument there. Next up, we got Nope, one of my favorite alien films of all time. I know it's essentially Jaws for the sky. I think it works. Obviously, I love Jaws, so I'm gonna love this. And I didn't know that it was Jaws in the sky until I was in the theater and I realized it. I was like, wait a minute. I was recognizing familiar beats and character almost arcs and moments. And I remember whispering over to my mom and dad being like, this is Jaws in the sky. It just blew my mind, and I loved it, and I really appreciated it. After that, we got Orphan. This film, I don't think has too much rewatch value, but that first time, man, is freaking insane. So if you haven't seen Orphan, just go watch it. Don't need to watch the trailer. Don't read the synopsis, because if you probably look it up, it'll come up with spoilers. But Orphan is an insane psychological horror. It could also technically kind of be a slasher. No, psychological. Next up, we got Overlord. This is one of my favorite zombie films of all time. This also came out in 2017, I believe. I really liked Overlord. I need to purchase this film, or maybe I do. I think I do own it, but it's so badass. It's just action through and through. The contorting of the creature zombie things are super cool and weird. It's just a fun time watching Nazis get obliterated. And moving on from there, we got Paranormal Activity 1, 2, and 3. I love all three of these films. I don't care what anybody says. The first one is iconic just for being the low-budget camcorder found footage paranormal film that really revitalized the genre after Blair Witch Project. It's iconic. Then you got the second one, which I actually really enjoy. I think continuing the story the way they did was a good job. And then finishing off the trilogy with the third one, I thought was fantastic. I don't know. I really, really liked it. So I think they could have just left it at those three, and I would have been very happy. But all three of those films are obviously paranormal, so they're going in the paranormal category. Next up, we got Pearl. This could be a psychological because it doesn't have too many kills. I don't remember. It doesn't have too many kills. Well, I feel like I need to put it in slashers, but I'm going to put it in psychological. But Pearl is amazing. It's a great follow-up to X, and I cannot wait for Maxine. Moving on, we got Pet Sematary. This is fantastic, and this is another paranormal supernatural film. I don't quite think it's a horror classic. It's not something that I would really ever revisit. I just think the idea of it all is so crazy and dark and cool. It's just, the execution of it on film has never been what I think it could be. So it's going in paranormal, supernatural. Next up, we got Phantom of the Opera. I watched this for the first time this year. Another film that I don't know if I'll watch anytime soon, but I thought it was, pretty well done. That's a family-friendly movie. It's not graphic. Next up, we got Possessor. This is a Brandon Cronenberg film, the son of David Cronenberg. Yes. He did Infinity Pool, released in 2023. This film, I think, is miles better and way, way, way scarier. This is, again, another psychological. This is like futuristic psychological horror. It's bizarre and almost action-y. It's like a Hitman movie. It's weird, but go check it out. I've probably said go check it out 1,000 times. Let's get through these. I've already recorded for 35 minutes. Let's get this going. We got Practical Magic. This is it's a witchy film, but, you could put this in supernatural, but I think it's family-friendly enough. My girlfriend watched this when she was younger, and that's why she made me watch it. I think it's cute. It's fun. It's not something I'm going to revisit. It's not my thing, but there's an audience for it. Next up is another classic. We got The Birds. This is a monster film, if you want to call birds monsters, but that's going to go up into the classic category. And then, moving on, Ready or Not. This is a bizarre cult supernatural because of the way things end. If you've seen the film, you know. I did not mean to put it in family friendly because it's not family friendly, but I think I'm going to put it in. It's not about a slasher, so it's going to seem weird that I'm putting it in slashers, but it's got a lot of fun kills. It probably fits more so in supernatural. I'm going to stick with my gut and go slashers. Why not? Next up, we got Scooby-Doo and the Ghoul School. This is one of my girlfriend's favorites from when she was a kid, and that's obviously going to go into family-friendly. Another family-friendly is the live-action Scooby-Doo from 2000 or 2002. That movie, I think, is fantastic. Love Matthew Lillard. Speaking of Matthew Lillard, we got Scream and Scream 2, obviously. Actually, do I have every Scream? I think this is the only franchise on here that I told myself, okay, I can put as many Scream films on this list as I want. I think I put 4 of them. So yeah, Scream 1, which is going to go not in family friendly. It's going to get, sorry, this list is getting big. So we're going to go up to the classics category. It is my favorite slasher of all time. Then we've got Scream 2. This goes into the, I gotta scroll up, put them in there every time. This goes into the slasher category. I don't think it's nearly as good as the original, but it's still fantastic. And kind of same with Scream 5, and what else was there? Scream 4. Scream 4 I could almost put up into classic just because it was my first midnight premiere. And I remember watching all of the Scream films leading up to it. I was extremely hyped. I had no idea who the killer was, no leaks, nothing like that. This was back, 2011, before huge leaks were super common on your phone. And so I I have a great memory of that experience. So for that alone, I think I'm gonna say screw it, and I'm gonna put Scream 4 up in the classics category, which that's gonna piss some people off, but whatever. Next up, we got The Shallows. This is the best shark movie released in the past 20 years. I don't feel like there's really any argument to it. I feel like it's got a solid enough storyline with a cool and entertaining enough survival element that it's just a fun time. Seeing it in theaters, I had my palms all sweaty. When you look at other shark films, you know, Deep Blue Sea, Jaws, The Shallows, those are kind of the 3 shark movies that I think about. There's some other films that are good, but nothing are quite as entertaining as I would say those 3 shark films. Moving on, we got Shaun of the Dead. This is a zombie film, but it's a horror comedy at the end of the day. This is the best of the Coronado trilogy, in my opinion. I love Edgar Wright, though. Moving on, we got The Shining. This is easily a classic. I'm not going to argue that, and I'm not going to put it anywhere else because I don't want people bitching at me about The Shining. But The Shining, it's a classic. I didn't watch it for the longest time, which I actually appreciate. I'm glad that I didn't watch it as a kid because I wouldn't have understood it. And I definitely think I found it much more scary and much more interesting being able to watch it as an adult and actually comprehend what I was watching. Moving on, we got the scariest alien film, in my personal opinion. That's Signs. That's because my sister fucked me up and let me watch it with her and her friends. And I had nightmares for literal years. It's going in obviously the alien category. I can still watch the film, but I remember trying to rewatch it to get over my fear of the movie. It still creeped me out. My dad and I were both like, oh yeah, I'm not as scared, but that was still fucking creepy. Next up, we got Sinister, which was another one of those movies that was, ranked the scariest movie of all time due to the heart rate per minute or heartbeat per minute, whatever it was. And obviously it got beat by Host, but it's one of the scariest films of all time. Those shocking clips are exactly that. They are shocking clips. There's no more to say. If you haven't seen Sinister, it's a dark film. It is graphic, but it's not like Evil Dead 2013, blood in your face, rain and blood type of graphic. It's not Saw. And speaking of Saw, there's no Saw on this list. That is very intentional because I'm just not a fan of the franchise. If you know me, you know that I don't like the franchise, but I did enjoy Saw X. But yeah, no, Saw can stay off of this list. Next up, we got Split. This was the second of the Invincible, I guess, trilogy, and I love this film. Invincible and Split are fantastic in their own right. They didn't need to be connected. I don't like Glass. This one is easily a psychological horror film. I think James McAvoy's performances are insane. Moving on, we got The Strangers. It's a psychological horror film, but it's a slasher, even though only like 2 people die, I think. But it's so creepy. Strangers is like probably top 10 scariest films of all time, in my personal opinion, just because it's so real and raw. Moving on, we got Suspiria. This was going to go into that culty category from earlier, but it's got to go into supernatural now because it deals with witches. So like I'll put that next to Hellbender just because it deals with witches, and I love the original Suspiria. Moving on, we got Talk to Me, a new paranormal possession film from 2023 that also extremely fun, like a fun horror movie that's also dark and gritty and emotional. Very, very well done. Next up, we got Tenebrae, or Tenebrae, but I'm pretty sure it's Tenebrae. This movie was an awesome first-time watch. I really thought I had it figured out, and I did at a certain point. I had it figured out, but it took me way longer than I should have. And this is a film like I will definitely be watching sometime soon as well, and I want to watch more of Argento's work because he's fantastic, and I really did like Tenebrae. I think I might even like it more than Suspiria, but I just love the color and everything about Suspiria. So Tenebrae is going in. It has psychological elements, but it's a slasher film at the end of the day. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, is it a slasher? I don't think so. I think it's paranormal. Why did I say that? I think it's psychological. Yeah, at the end of the day, it's horrific, and there's some kills, but it's more in line of something like Hereditary or Pearl or X. I know that Pearl and X and Hereditary probably take from something like Texas Chainsaw, but when you compare them, you definitely see that Texas Chainsaw is a much slower film than even something like Halloween, which is pure slasher. Moving on, we've got, oh wait, I'm an idiot. I put Psycho. in the classics category, which is still going to stay there. I thought it was The Birds, but Psycho is staying up in the in that category. Psycho's fantastic. Rewatched that this year as well. So now I found The Birds, which we will also put up into the... It could be a family-friendly movie, but I'm going to put it into the classics just because I think it's fantastic. After that, we got The Conjuring, another paranormal film. I loved it at the time. I don't love it as much now. Now we've got The Grudge. This film is gnarly. I don't rewatch it, though. I don't rewatch it a lot, so like all the films that are in the classics portion are kind of like the films that are my go-tos. So The Grudge isn't a go-to, but I'm going to put that in paranormal, supernatural. Moving on, we got The Innocents. This one is crazy. It's dark. It was one of my favorite films of 2022. If you haven't seen The Innocents and you don't mind reading subtitles, go check this film out because it's insane. It's like one of the darkest movies from last year, but it's a slow burn and it's a great psychological but also supernatural film. But I'm going to put psychological for the most part. It's got supernatural elements, I'll tell you that, but plays with them in a more psychological way. And after that, we've got The Invitation from 2015, I believe, and it's got Logan Marshall Green, I think. He's fantastic, the guy from Upgrade. And this film, every time I rewatch it, I'm blown away with how good it is. It's one location. It's like 8 cast members, maybe 10 max. Like, it's super, super well done and super stressful, super tense. This was gonna go in the cult-ish category, but I think I'm gonna put it in slasher? No, I'm gonna put it in psychological. Yeah, I'm gonna put it in psychological. After that, we got The Loved Ones from 2009, I believe. This one is brutal. I'm putting it in slasher, and I'm not saying a word. Moving on from brutal to depressing, we got The Mist. Which I'm actually not a huge fan of, but it's just, it's a recommendation for you guys that, this is an alien film at the end of the day. Yeah, it's got cool stuff. It's just not for me. Moving on, we got The Mummy from 1932, and it's a classic, but I'm going to put it in monster movies just because it's not one that I rewatch or anything, so sorry to anybody who's upset about that. Then we've got The Night House. This one, I took way too long to watch, but this one was so creepy through and through the entire time. Just, seeing weird faces being made out of the structure of your house, like... I know that sounds weird, but it happens, and it's creepy, and it works. That's going into supernatural. We got The Ring, which is another supernatural film. It's a classic, but it's not one that I rewatch all the time. I remember The Ring more so for my sisters being scared of it than me, because my brother locked my sisters in a closet and made them watch it. And that's when I was way too young to even remember it, but just hearing that story over and over again, I had to eventually watch the film. After that, we got an extremely dark film. I'm gonna put this in zombies. I know that kind of doesn't make too much sense if you've seen the film. It is called The Sadness, and it's about a disease that makes people just go crazy. I don't think I will ever watch this film ever again. But if you're in for crazy, absolute bloody mess, go watch The Sadness. It's on Shudder. Okay, and now we're circling back around to what I think is John Carpenter's best film of all time. We've got The Thing, which is totally family friendly. Nope, we're going back up to the classics. Did I put in classics? There we go. Yep, The Thing, right there. It's an alien film at the end of the day, but it's the best alien film? Is it? Is it better than Alien? I don't know. But it's up there, and it's up there for a reason. So, actually, this is surprising that I did this. We've got one more Christmas kind of film. That's The Visit, another M. Night Shyamalan film. We're going to put it in psychological. Actually, no. We're going to put that in horror comedy, because it's funny. The kids are funny in that film. The brother, especially, he's the main form of the comedic relief in the film. And I think he does a fantastic job. Again, it's not a film that I revisit too often, but I've watched it 2 or 3 times, and I've laughed and enjoyed it every single time. After that, we got Ryan Reynolds in The Voices from 2014, I believe. This is a very, very bizarre film. I don't know if it breaks the fourth wall, but there's talking animals to an extent. I know that sounds weird. There's talking animals. I mean, if you get, the name's called The Voices, so the dude hears voices, but you should watch it if you're into horror comedies as well as slashers. It's not really a slasher. It's almost a drama at some points because it's kind of depressing. It's fun enough, and it's quirky enough. The visuals especially are really quirky and fun. So go check out the voices. Next up, we got They Live. We only got a couple left, so let's just speed roll through these. We got They Live. This is an alien film, 1984. I don't remember. But this film is so over the top. It's known for that iconic super long fight scene that could have been 20 more minutes longer. And then we got Tremors. Tremors is obviously a monster movie. Giant worm things coming out of the ground that are pretty spooky. I watched this with a friend when I was like 6 or 7 going on a camping trip, and we watched it in the little TV screen in the back of their car seats, and I remember it creeped me out quite a bit because we were going somewhere that was kind of a deserty location. So it was a fun movie to watch before going camping. Then we got Trick or Treat. I watched this for the first time last year. Now one of my all-time favorite horror films, one of my all-time favorite Halloween films. Sam is iconic for a reason. I can't believe it took me this long to watch this film. I'm kind of glad though, because now I'm not burnt out on the film, and I just, on that first watch, I was piecing things together, and it made me so happy. So it's really gonna go into the classic section. I love Trick or Treat. Then we've got Us, another Jordan Peele film. This is psychological, doppelganger, slasher type of thing, but it's psychological at the end of the day. It's not nearly as good as Get Out or Nope, in my opinion, like huge step down between, but I don't think it's bad. I just love Get Out and Nope so much more than Us. But yeah, Us is really fun. Next up, we got VHS, the original from 2012. This is still to this day my favorite VHS film that's been released, probably because I rewatched it so much and it came out of nowhere. It felt like nobody really knew about VHS. I was the one person in my, friend group showing the movie to my friends, being like, hey, have you heard about this? And none of them had. So it just kind of, again, another movie where it had a cool place in my heart and my memory. So I really do love that first VHS, and every single segment in it I do think is fantastic and terrifying. But with that's gonna go, this could literally go into everything. It could go into monster, horror comedies, psychological, partially does it? Yeah, I think it goes aliens in the second movie. But yeah, so we'll leave it in paranormal, supernatural. That's fine there. Then we got Watcher from 2022. This movie is super good, super underrated. Another Micah Monroe film. So she's got 2 films on here. Good for her, because she's fantastic. The performances all around are insane. About a woman going to her husband's country, and it's basically that language barrier, and she feels like she's being watched, and her husband essentially just doesn't pay attention to those signs. It gets really creepy. A lot of people feel like there wasn't not enough payoff, but I completely disagree. I thought it was really well done, and the climax of the film I thought was like essentially perfect. So Watcher is going into psychological horror. Then we've got another family friendly. This is going to be Werewolf by Night, the Marvel Disney Plus Halloween special from last year. I thought this was really fun, and for being Marvel, for being Disney, I didn't expect them to take a risk like that. I know they still kind of played it pretty safe, but it was one of the more darker elements that they've presented, and I'm just glad that they tried something a little bit different for once. So Werewolf by Night, I haven't rewatched it this year, but a couple years from now I'll probably rewatch it. Maybe I'll watch the recolored version or the colored version of it and see if there's super big differences or if I like that version more. But either way, I thought it was fun, and it's definitely a good watch for the family. Moving on, we got What We Do in the Shadows. This is a hit or miss for the family friendly spot, because it's definitely got a lot of blood, but it's comedic. It's all a comedy. It's a horror comedy at the end of the day. So I guess I'll stick it in horror comedy, but I do think some, teenagers can watch this. 13-year-olds would a 13-year-old me would have lost his mind with this movie. I would have loved it. I still love it. Yeah, it's a fun watch. Taika Waititi does a great job. All right, last 3 films. We have, I'm going to pull these in a weird order. We're going to go this way. We're going to go Zombieland. This is obviously going in, no, it's going in horror comedies. But Zombieland, I don't rewatch it now because I've seen it so much. I watched it way too much as a kid, which I will say kind of ruined it for me. Like, I don't think I'll be able to watch this film maybe for like another 5 years. Like, I really just don't care to watch the movie, but it's still so fun. Like, if you haven't seen it, or if you've seen it once and don't remember it, go check it out, because it is a fun time, and Woody Harrelson's fantastic. Last 2 movies, we got Your Next, 2013, I believe. This is could have gone in cult-ish, but it's also slasher, but also psychological. I still think I'm going to stick it in psychological just because you're trying to figure out... Actually, no, what? This is the one where I think it belongs. It does belong in slasher. You're trying to figure out, obviously, who's wearing these masks, who's killing, and you end up finding out, that's for sure. Last movie of the 131, unless, you know, this isn't 131 and I miscounted. All right, and last but not least, we have X. This easily goes into the slasher category. This is certainly not least, because this is my favorite film of 2022, one of my favorite films of the entire decade so far. So let's just put this in slashers. Obviously, it's not paranormal. I just got to work my way up there. Let's put this in slashers, and this is one where I know these aren't rankings, but I'm going to put it at the top of the slasher category because out of all of these slashers here, it truly is my favorite slasher. I know that's not including the ones seen up in the classic category, but that's because they're classics. They're, you know, there's almost no arguing those, I would say. X, I personally would put in classics, but I still think it's got some time to grow among fans. So that is everything. All 131 Halloween movie recommendations, going from classic horror films, all ranging from sci-fi to slasher to monster movies to zombies to paranormal to alien, literally everything up there. So the classics is pretty well diverse. You've got some great options in the slasher category. I truly think if you put on any one of those slasher films and you were a pre-existing slasher fan, you'll get some enjoyment out of these. Vampires, there's not as many as I expected to land into this category, not as many as I thought that I had put on this list. With that being said, I do have a ranking of every single vampire film I've ever seen coming out very shortly. It will be a tier list as well. And I guess I can say that about the aliens as well as the paranormal and supernatural categories. I've got tier list rankings of all the alien films that I've seen and all of the paranormal / supernatural films that I've seen, which those will come out shortly. Just got to get those finished and edited. But yeah, as far as the vampires go, we got 5 solid vampire films. 2 of them are the same film. One of them's a remake, one of them is kind of a horror comedy, and 2 of them are one's a romance, one's pretty dark. After that, we got the family friendly category. This really is quite diverse. It's, you know, you got Casper, Beetlejuice, Quiet Place, Practical Magic, Werewolf by Night, Gremlins, Halloween Town, and of course my own movie, My Summer as a Goth. I kind of forgot that I put that in there just because filming this portion at a later time. After that, we got the alien category, which, how many do we have in here? 5, 10 solid alien films. I know a lot of people wouldn't consider it a pure alien film, but he's an alien. The paranormal and supernatural category seems to have the most options. 22 films. Wow, that's a lot. That's a big portion of movies to have. 22 films. Yeah, that's more than the classic category. That's quite surprising. I know that 3 of them obviously are coming from the Paranormal Activity franchise, so that takes a big chunk, but there's some really good paranormal options here. I'll say out of all of these, I think my favorite is easily Donnie Darko, which if you haven't seen, I'm not going to say anything about because it is one of the trippiest films you'll ever see. Alright, and then we got the psychological category, of course, ranging from Green Room to Audition, a Japanese film, of course, leading up to Ari Aster's, let's see, is Hereditary on there? Yep, Hereditary and Midsommar. Honestly, I'm happy with this list. I'm happy with the way that it came out. I hope that you guys get some fun recommendations. I hope that you enjoy these recommendations. Let me know any of these films that you haven't seen that you end up watching because of this list. Let me know down in the comments what you think of whatever movie it is you may be seeing. Do you have a favorite movie on this list as a whole? A least favorite movie? Is there a movie on this list that you think just absolutely makes no sense being on a Halloween movie recommendation list? Let me know down in the comments below. But that is it for the 131 Halloween movie recommendations. But that's it. Be sure to stick around for all of my tier list rankings of the vampire films that I've seen, alien films that I've seen, and the paranormal films that I've seen. Can't wait for you guys to see that. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great Halloween.